Well, hey everybody, welcome here to day 29 of Joyful January. Got a couple days left and a couple more things that we just need to dive into together. So today we're going to talk about the process that God uses to restore us, the process that God uses to transform us. How in the Christian life, the intentional Christian life, do we grow? And the Bible talks about this. It's a putting off of the old things and a taking on of the new things. It's saying no to some things as we say yes to some things. In fact, it's running from a certain set of things and chasing after a set of different things. And Paul talks about this process here in Ephesians 4. He says, "You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness." And so this is one of the ways that we grow. We are to do this continually, every day, is to remove the things that hinder our relationship with God. Remove the things that hinder our Christ-likeness, and to add the things and to chase after the things that foster a deep relationship with God. And over time, you'll see change. You will. It's how God works. You may not see instant change, but over time, you'll begin to see the change that comes from running from the things that God says, these aren't going to help you, and running after the things that God says are going to build a strong soul, a strong relationship with Jesus, and foster Christ-likeness in your life. About 7 years ago, my wife and I were looking for a house, and we saw a listing of a house that it did not look like it was in good condition, but it looked like it was a good price. And so we showed up at the open house and wanted to check out the place. And we quickly realized this was not like any open house that we had ever been to. They were not ready for us. It had not been cleaned up or tidied in any way. In fact, we could tell that there was a pretty destructive situation going on in this house. And so we walked in and we began to see holes in the wall throughout the house. As we went to one of the bathrooms, the floor was unstable. It looked like it was going to cave in if we went any further. In the backyard, everything had just overgrown. It was all just grown over with weeds and had paid no attention. It was hard to walk through all of the overgrowth. And there were two massive dogs that were actually there and had actually left all sorts of fecal evidence all over the place that they had been there that hadn't been bothered to clean up. And as we went upstairs to go to the primary bedroom, it was actually locked. And we had found out that one of the tenants that was living there locked themselves in there because they didn't want the place to be sold. And so we walked out of that and said, we'll take it. We want to live here. And ultimately, it took a bit of a process. It was a short sale, but ultimately 7 months later, we moved into that house. And so when we got the keys to the house, what we did was we took all of the old and we piled it in the living room, right? All of the sinks that were broken and the flooring that was messed up and the vanities that were broken. And we took a trimmer to the hedges that had overgrown. And we got rid of all of that stuff and we put in the new. We repaired the holes in the wall. We replaced the pipes. We put fertilizer and new plants to take root, and we watered them and set up an irrigation system. So if you had driven by this house, you would know that there was a new owner. You would know that somebody else now occupied this place because change was happening. How do you know a new resident had moved in? Well, the flowers were starting to bloom, and they weren't crowded out by all the weeds. And how do you know that Jesus has taken up residence in your heart? Well, you begin to put off those old things and you take on the new things that Jesus brings. And this is an active process. It doesn't happen by itself. We have to cooperate with Jesus. We've got to partner with Jesus to be able to remove those hindrances, those things that discourage unity with him. and to be able to take on those things that bring life, that bring restoration and healing and repair, and that allow us to freely chase after God's call over our life. So how are you doing this? How are you every day taking off those old things that discourage unity with Jesus and taking on those new things that allow us to follow him with all of our heart? How are you doing this? Are there some things right now that need to leave your life that you just need to say, no, it's enough. I'm cutting that off. I'm running from that. I'm taking that off. Jesus said that if your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out, throw it away, because that would be better than continuing to live in things that allow you to stumble. And we're not as strong as we think. We aren't. I'll tell you that. We may be in a situation and go, you know what? It's not impacting me. I am my own person, and I can be here and still not sin or still not stumble. You know what? Oftentimes it's just not true. They did an experiment with those famous white mice. UCLA did this experiment, and they were trying to figure out how much speed can you give a mouse that it takes until it dies. But they needed to introduce this drugged mouse into a population of stable mice. And so they did that, and they continued to give the mice more speed, the mice that were drugged. And before you know it, they're running around and cranked up. And then what started to happen? The mice that were not drugged started to run around and were all cranked up. And these mice, all of them, just started dying like this, like popcorn. Because what had happened? The mice that were drugged began to influence those that weren't. And it was as if they were drugged. And I'll tell you, a lot of times that's what happens to us. Our environment, our context that we're put in begins to influence us in a way that's not unhealthy, in a way that actually promotes disunity with Christ. We may be sitting here on social media, scrolling through for hours, the different posts, and go, you know what? It's not having an effect on me. I won't let it influence me. But you know what? It does. The environment that we live in, the things that we see, the things that we experience, they change our brain. They have an impact on our soul. And so we got to push those things that promote disunity with Christ away. We have to do this, and we have to go after the source and not the symptoms. I don't know if you've seen this kind of famous metaphor, but if you had a fish that was sick, would you treat the fish, or would you change the water to make sure that that environment is promoting health for that fish? Yeah, you'd change the water. If you knew it was dirty, you would change it. And so we need to change the context that we live in and set up an environment that allows for health and growth in Christ. We do. So the challenge today, is there something that you need to take off, that you need to run from, that you need to put away, and just say, I'm not going to allow that to be between me and Jesus anymore. I'm not. And is there something new that you know you need to take on? Is there a new thing that you need to invite into your life that you know is going to make a difference after you chase after Jesus? It's going to allow you to chase him more alive and free to who God's made you to be. That's the encouragement today. What do you need to take off? What do you need to put on? I hope it makes a difference in your day, and I know it's going to produce some joy in your life if you're able to do that. All right, everybody. I love you so much. We'll see you back tomorrow for day 30. Woohoo!